Hey there, class. Welcome to one of the best chapters in the entire semester. This is the Human Development chapter. So, fair warning, development is my bag. That's the thing that I got my master's degree in and was studying for in my doctoral work. So, I've got a lot to share with you. I have tried to pick and choose the most interesting and relevant things. So we are going to be taking a look at the following topics: Erikson's theory of psychosocial development, how do we develop in the womb, how do infants and children develop, how do adolescents develop, and finally, how do we develop in adulthood. All right, let's start with Erikson. So let's set the stage here for all of development, okay? Erikson proposes that there are 8 stages across the lifespan. And so this goes from infancy up to older adulthood, and then death is over here. And at each stage, there is some kind of psychosocial crisis that we engage in. It just bubbles up naturally. So for the infant, he says that crisis is trust versus mistrust. And if we resolve it well, we end up with drive and hope. We're not going to worry about these words right here. What I want you to learn is this versus this. In toddlerhood, we work on autonomy versus shame and doubt, initiative versus guilt in the preschool years, industry versus inferiority in the school years, identity versus role confusion in adolescence, intimacy versus isolation, generativity versus stagnation, and ego integrity versus despair. Okay. We're just going to linger on this slide for about 10 minutes or so. So get your notes out, get out your study guide, and take a listen to this. So let's just imagine you as a baby. Okay, you can't remember that, but just imagine yourself, little tiny newborn baby. And what are you doing? Well, you're being fed about every 3 or 4 hours. You cry, you poop, you burp. You want to be held and snuggled, right? Those are all the things that are happening. And what can you do to get your needs met? Cry. That's really about it. You can't even deliberately reach your hand out. You can't say anything. You can't say words. You can barely focus your eyes. All you have is crying. And it's a little bit life and death. They will make you wake your baby up if your baby tries to sleep more than 3 or 4 hours. So you've got a life and death situation, and all you can do is cry. And so there you are, you're lying in the crib, and you're crying, and you're hoping that someone's going to come. And if mom comes, and she is sensitive and responsive, and she does her best to figure out what you need, whether it's being held, or burped, or fed, or diaper changed, or some, anti-rash ointment, whatever it is, if she can do that, then you develop a sense of basic trust, a sense of feeling like, okay, I can trust mom, and then this expands to other people. If I can trust mom, then when you go to preschool, you can trust your teacher, and when you go to kindergarten, you can trust friends, and when you're dating, you can trust romantic partners, and you develop a sense of basic trust in other people. But what if mom doesn't come? What if she's on drugs and neglects you? What if she has severe postpartum depression and so doesn't come? What if something like that happens and you cry and cry and cry for hours and it's life and death? Then what happens? At that point, you may develop what's called a basic sense of mistrust, a basic sense that I can't trust anybody, and I can't trust friends or teachers or romantic partners or bosses or the doctor. And this becomes pervasive and widespread, and it becomes sort of a part of who you are. It builds your personality. Development stacks. So this is trust versus mistrust, and then this is autonomy versus shame and doubt, and then this is initiative versus guilt. But if we're in basic mistrust, then the whole thing starts to go off and onto a wrong track. And it's going to affect everything else as we go through life. So hopefully people end up in basic trust, but a number of people end up in mistrust. Then we move into the preschool years. And the psychosocial crisis that bubbles up here is called autonomy versus shame and doubt. So I want you to think for a second. Think about the last time you interacted with a toddler. What is a toddler's favorite word? No, right? That's the favorite thing to say. You say, do you want to go to school? No. Do you want to put on your shoes? No. Do you want ice cream? You'll probably get a no. I mean, they'll say no to anything. And if it's not no, then it's probably mine. They are seriously working on autonomy. And now, why would that be? Why would this bubble up in those toddler years? And when we say toddler, we mean like age 1 to 3, kind of a range. Preschooler is age 3 and up. Here's what's happening. So they're working on, at age 1, there's 2 really, really big things that happen. Can you think of what it is? One is cognitive and one is physical. What can a 1-year-old do suddenly, right around age 1? They're able to walk. And what are they able to do cognitively? This is when we hear the first words. And so this is a point at which they suddenly develop a fair amount of independence. They can get away from mom. Mom says, put on your shirt, and they're able to run away. Mom says, eat your peas, and now you can say no. And so those 2 developments cause this push for autonomy and the sense that I'm different from mom and I want to control things. And not only do I want to control myself, I want to control the whole entire world. Now, can they do that? Can they control the entire world? Well, no, they really can't. They have to learn to cooperate with other people. That they really have to do that. And so if we feed the child's need for autonomy by letting them choose the red shirt or the blue shirt, or peas or carrots, or you climb up into your chair or I pick you up, or pick up the blocks first or pick up the Barbies first. If we let them choose, then they have this sense of autonomy. But sometimes parents don't do that, right? Sometimes they say, no, you're taking too long putting on your shoes. I'll put them on for you. No, you can't climb up into the chair. I'm going to put you there. No, you can't wear a polka dot shirt with plaid pants. You're going to wear this. Sometimes parents do that, and really in a well-meaning way. But that can really undermine a child at this age, and they may end up feeling a sense of shame, a sense of, I am bad. That mom thinks that I'm bad and I can't do the things that I want to do. The next one, when we get into the preschool years, this is ages 3 to 5, is initiative versus guilt. If I get out my vacuum, what is my 4-year-old going to want to do? Vacuum. If I start working on the car, what is my 4 or 5-year-old going to want to do? They're going to want to work on the car too, right? If I sit down to play a game with them, are they going to want to share? Are they going to want to tell me how to play the game? Of course. They want to take all kinds of initiative, which is healthy, but again, they have to learn to kind of cooperate with other people. And so if we give them lots of ways to take initiative, we let them boss us around a little bit in the game. We let them climb up next to us when we're washing dishes and wash, 5 or 6 of them. We give them a toy vacuum and they can vacuum with the toy vacuum while we vacuum with the real vacuum. Then that feeds that desire for initiative and staves off a little bit of the guilt. If we undermine them all the time and say, no, you're too little to wash dishes. No, that's just a stupid toy vacuum. You're not really doing anything with that. They end up with a sense of guilt, which is a feeling of, I did a bad thing. Shame is, I am bad, and guilt is, I did a bad thing. So they get the sense that the things that they're trying to do are not valued. The next stage is industry versus inferiority. This is school-age kids. So this is going to be like first through about 6th grade, something like that. And this is a time when they're not really interested in the opposite sex. They're building friendships. They're doing all kinds of things. They're trying to be good at sports and trying to be good at school and art and form friendships. And I mean, they're just loaded up with tasks. And if they feel that they have become industrious, if there's something that they're good at, that they can work at and be good at, it doesn't have to be everything, it just has to be one thing, then they end up with a sense of being industrious. But if they're undermined in this in some way, if they regularly fail, if other people tell them they're no good, they can end up in what's called inferiority. I saw a child, I've only seen this once, a child who truly had a sense of inferiority. I was helping in my daughter's 5th grade classroom at a Christmas party, and I was manning a station where we had, they were playing a game. There was a really big, like, ornament, ball ornament, and then they had some pieces of cardboard that were wrapped in paper, and they were supposed to, like, flap the cardboard to cause wind to blow that big ball down to an end point. And so I tried it, and it was a little bit hard, and I had to kind of figure out exactly how to flap my cardboard to make it work. But, you know, all the kids did that, and they laughed and had fun with it until there was this one kid who came. And I had noticed her before during school pickup because she was very slumped. Like, her body, her back, her whole body was just... And she came up and she just kind of limply flapped the cardboard. And it didn't do anything. And I said, oh, try again. And she sort of half-heartedly did. And then she said, I can't do it. And she started to walk away. And I was in shock because I'd never seen a child do this before. And I called over the teacher, who was a friend of mine. I said, what's going on with this one? And she jumped in. She knew exactly what was going on. She jumped in. Oh no, we're not quitters in this room. We are, let's do it. Come on, so-and-so, let's do it together. And so they did, and it worked out pretty well. But this is a child who needed to learn a sense of industry. The next one is identity versus versus role confusion. Identity versus role confusion. This is in the adolescence period. This is when you have to figure out who you are. And this is triggered by the newfound cognitive development that you're experiencing. You suddenly have the ability to think and reflect on who you are because you're entering formal operational thought. And you can think about who are you going to become and what are you going to do with yourself. And so this is when we try all kinds of things on. I went through a cheerleader phase. That was not me. I went through a goth phase. I didn't actually dress goth, but I was friends with all the goths for quite a while. And then in college, I was still doing this, and I went through a grunge black motorcycle jacket, Doc Martens, guy jeans and flannel shirts phase, because that was the 90s and that's what you did. So this is identity versus role confusion, where we try on different identities to see what is going to work for us. And if we can resolve this well, we get a sense of self. And if we don't, we kind of stay in role confusion and don't really know who we are. Once we figure out who we are, we can move into the young adult phase, which is intimacy versus isolation. This is the point at which we really have to start forming an intimate relationship with someone else. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to marriage, although marriage does tend to be very healthy for people. But we have to be able to form an intimate, caring, emotionally close relationship with another person. And when we don't, we end up feeling like we are isolated from other people. I know many a young person in their 20s has experienced that. In middle age, this is generativity versus stagnation. I am hardcore in this particular phase still. This is where something in you bubbles up, as it does with all of these, where you're like, I've got to do this thing. And for many of us in middle age, it's like we hit 40 and we realize, oh my gosh, I'm halfway to the end. And is it going to have mattered that I was here? That's the question that we ask ourselves. And so what that hopefully produces is an enormous sense of generativity, a sense that I'm going to go out there and try to leave a legacy so that there will be something left behind when I'm gone. And this could be as simple as raising your kids. It could be being a teacher. I get my generativity through working with and teaching and mentoring college students. I also get it through my children. And if we end up, though, in stagnation, then think of The Office, right? So they're just sort of pushing paper around. They're not really trying to create anything. They're just sort of living aimlessly day to day. You don't want to end up in that. And then finally, ego integrity versus despair. This is where we're facing down death. It's probably within the next 5 to 10 years, and we know that. And this is the point at which we begin to say, was the life that I lived, am I okay with it? Was it a good life? Have I resolved things well enough? You don't have to look back and say, oh, it was so perfect. You don't have to have all the problems solved, but you have to look back and say, I can see where I came from and where I went, and I'm okay with it. And sometimes we don't get there. Sometimes we end up in what's called despair, the sense of it was not a life worth living. I've got too many unresolved conflicts, and I don't know where to go from here. So this particular theory, I find it extremely useful for thinking about development. I will say there's, over time, Erikson was working in the 50s and 60s. Over time, identity versus role confusion has kind of pushed out. I would say we're still doing this until at least up to about 25. And intimacy, and maybe even 30, intimacy has now been pushed to 25 to 30, where we begin to work on that, which worries me a little bit because age 35 becomes difficult for child rearing. So, okay. That is Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. I hope you enjoyed that. And we're going to do our discussion board on this week. So I've got here, I'm not going to walk you through this, but because I already kind of talked you through it, but this will give you a little bit more detail on each of the stages. And here's what we're going to do. It's not group work. We're going to do it online. I want you to create a social media post for an individual at, preferably at each of Erikson's stages. That's what I'd like. Add some hashtags and emojis. Your post should clearly connect with what the stage is about. Make sure we can tell what stage it is. And then I want you to post them out on this Padlet. So use your phone and connect to the QR code. And you're going to go to an external website called Padlet. And then I want you to comment and guess other people's posts. So I'll look over there and make sure that people are engaging. I think I might also, I might put a way for you to upload some screenshots in Canvas. I'll think about that. Let me give you an example of what this might look like. Some of you are like, wait, what? Trust versus mistrust. Darn, I've been in this diaper for like 30 minutes, shaking my head. I knew I couldn't trust people. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. All right, that's it. I'm a strong, independent 2-year-old. I don't need no parents. Initiative versus guilt. Dad was fixing the car, so I got out my toolbox to help. Even though Dad said mine was just a toy, I know I nailed it. Low-key think he might actually be Bob the Builder. The next one, industry versus inferiority. Getting better at math, making friends on the playground, feeling pretty legit. Hashtag awesomeness. So I'll let you read through the rest of those on your own. But a student one time created these. These were not mine. Thank you to him for letting me share this with all my students. So have fun with the discussion board. I'll see you in the comments.